There's a reason King the Conqueror's shadow still lingers across the entire Multiverse Saga, even after his apparent defeat. I've been replaying that final moment in Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania over and over. The flash, the implosion, the disbelief in Scott Lang's face. And every time I get this same feeling, King didn't die. He transcended. I mean, come on. This is King we're talking about. A being who experiences time not as a straight line, but as an infinite loop of possibilities. The guy literally told us he's seen how it all ends. So when that death scene plays out, part of me can't help but think we didn't see a defeat. We saw a transition, a reset, a reboot of King's existence itself. Welcome to Movie Cast. I'm Liam Harrison, and today we're diving into one of the most complex, mind-bending theories in all of the MCU. The return of Kang the Conqueror in Avengers Doomsday and Avengers Secret Wars. And here's the thing. This isn't just about whether Kang will come back. It's about how he could return, why his presence still matters, and how his story could redefine everything we think we know about the Marvel Cinematic Universe heading into its next multiversal climax. Because when you look at the clues, the timelines, and the meta strategy Marvel's been setting up, Kang's story feels far from over. Let's start from the top, the possible roads that lead to his comeback. The first path I want to explore is what I call the Phantom Return. Imagine Avengers Doomsday opening with chaos, temporal rifts fracturing reality itself. Strange anomalies flicker across the sky, timelines collapsing into one another, and amid all that chaos, a familiar voice echoes. We see him, Kang, not as a conqueror, but as a remnant, a glitch in the multiverse trying to anchor himself in a dying reality. Now, I think Marvel might pull something subtle here. Kang could appear in a short but impactful cameo, a sort of Ghost in the Machine appearance. Maybe he's trying to warn the Avengers. Maybe he's trying to manipulate them. Or maybe he's just a casualty of a larger force, Doctor Doom. See? There's this growing theory in the fandom that Doom might actually be the one who erases Kang from existence in Avengers Doomsday. It's poetic. In a way, the Conqueror, who ruled across time, getting erased by a man who seeks to rule across universes. If Marvel goes this route, Kang's return isn't meant to be triumphant. It's symbolic. He shows up to remind us and the heroes that the real threat isn't time itself, but the mind powerful enough to reshape it. Imagine that opening sequence, a short appearance, a few cryptic lines, maybe even a warning. And then, before we can fully process what's happening, Doom intervenes. Reality shatters. Kang vanishes. Gone as quickly as he appeared. But that's the trick, isn't it? Because in the world of Kang, disappearance doesn't mean death. It means divergence. It means a new version could already be forming in the background. That's the beauty of Kang as a character. Every defeat is a new beginning. He's the personification of inevitability. I think Marvel might use this short cameo and disappearance to reframe the stakes in Avengers Doomsday. They could start the movie with Kang, give us that immediate connection to everything we've been building towards since Loki Season 1, and then pivot the main threat toward Doom. That pivot would feel shocking, but it's also brilliant, because it lets Marvel move forward while still honoring the groundwork they laid with Kang's variants, like He Who Remains and the Council of Kangs. And that council, man, they're the real wild card here. The mid-credits scene of Quantumania wasn't just fan service, it was a promise. It showed us the infrastructure of Kang's empire, a literal multiversal senate made up of countless versions of himself. Some are primitive, some are futuristic. All of them share one goal: domination through time. So if Kang dies early in Doomsday, that doesn't erase his legacy. It just multiplies it. Because if one king falls, 1,000 others rise. And that's where the story gets really interesting. Now imagine Doom emerging as the main antagonist of Avengers Doomsday. He steps into the power vacuum left behind by Kang, claiming control over the collapsing timelines. Maybe he uses Kang's own technology, maybe even the remains of Kang's quantum core, to merge universes together, reshaping existence into something only he can rule. This shift would do more than just introduce Doom as a threat. It would mirror what's been happening in the comics for decades. In Secret Wars 2015, Doom literally becomes God Emperor Doom, using the remnants of destroyed universes to create Battleworld, a patchwork planet of realities stitched together by his will. So picture this. Avengers Doomsday ends not with Kang's victory, but with Doom's ascension. The world ends, but the multiverse continues in a new, fractured form. And while the heroes struggle to understand what's happened, something stirs beneath that broken reality. The faint echo of a Kang variant who survived. That's where we start to set the stage for Secret Wars. But before we get there, let me step back for a second. There's another detail in play here, something subtle that's been hiding in plain sight since Loki. Remember He Who Remains? The variant who controlled the TVA, who pruned timelines to prevent a multiversal war. He wasn't just trying to stop chaos. He was trying to stop himself. He was trying to stop Kang. And when Sylvie killed him, that was the spark that reignited the multiversal collapse. Now think about that for a second. If Kang truly died in Quantumania, then who's maintaining the stability of time? The TVA? Loki? Someone has to fill that void. And if that balance collapses again, wouldn't that create an opportunity for Kang or one of his variants to return? I think Marvel could use Avengers Doomsday as a soft reset of Kang's narrative. They could use his brief appearance to close one arc and quietly open another. A variant survives. Maybe not the same Kang from Quantumania, but a version more dangerous, more refined, shaped by the ruins of infinite worlds. And here's where I think things get fascinating. What if the Kang who returns later isn't a villain at all? What if he becomes something entirely new, a byproduct of the multiverse collapsing in on itself? We'll get to that in a bit. But first, let's dig deeper into how Secret Wars could turn Kang's downfall into his resurrection. When I think about Secret Wars, I imagine the multiverse tearing itself apart, worlds colliding, heroes from different timelines meeting for the first time, and the very fabric of reality breaking down into fragments. That's the perfect setting for a rebirth. If Doomsday establishes Doom as the supreme manipulator of the multiverse, then Secret Wars becomes the story of what happens when that control slips. And when it does, I think we'll see the return of Kang, not as the conqueror we knew, but as something more elemental. Picture this. Amid the wreckage of Battleworld, time begins to behave unpredictably. Reality flickers. And from that instability, a figure emerges, a Kang variant, perhaps reborn through the destruction of time itself. A comic-accurate Kang, the kind who wears that regal armor with cosmic authority and commands respect the moment he speaks. This wouldn't just be a cameo or a background role. It'd be the ultimate evolution, Kang reborn through chaos, shaped by the consequences of his past selves. This Kang could be the one who sees beyond conquest. A Kang who understands that to rule time, one must transcend it. It's poetic, right? The man who tried to control every possible future, finally realizing that his destiny isn't control, it's transformation. And if Marvel goes that route, they could set the stage for something even bigger, a Phase 7 Kang. Now there's another angle I want to explore, one that could tie all of this together beautifully. What if Kang and Doom aren't just enemies, but reflections of each other? In the comics, they've always had a fascinating rivalry. Doom represents dominion through intellect and willpower. Kang represents dominion through time and inevitability. They're two sides of the same coin, the scientist and the strategist, both obsessed with control. I can totally see Avengers Doomsday using that rivalry as a dramatic backbone. Maybe Doom sees King as a failed god, a warning of what happens when ambition outweighs discipline. Maybe King sees Doom as an arrogant mortal trying to rewrite inevitability. Their confrontation could symbolize the clash between two philosophies, control through reason versus control through time. And maybe, just maybe, that battle leaves scars that ripple into secret wars. Because let's face it, Doom might win the battle, but King's war never truly ends. His variants are eternal. His influence stretches across every timeline. Even if Doom kills him, the essence of King survives in every universe touched by his technology. That's what makes King's legacy so dangerous. It's not bound to one man or one actor or one story. It's an idea, a force, a ripple through the timeline that can never truly be erased. And speaking of actors, there's an elephant in the room. It's entirely possible that Marvel might choose to recast or reboot King after Secret Wars. If they do, it wouldn't just be a production decision, it could be a story decision. The multiverse collapsing, reality reforming, that's the perfect narrative excuse to reintroduce a new version of Kang, one that fits the post-Secret Wars MCU. It's the same playbook they used in the comics. After every major multiversal reset, certain characters come back. Changed. Different face. Same destiny. So imagine it. Secret Wars ends, reality reboots, and a new Kang steps forward. A younger, sharper, maybe even more terrifying version. A King who remembers echoes of what came before, but now carries the potential to reshape the next saga entirely. That would give Marvel a clean slate, a new actor, a new tone, a new threat, while still preserving the legacy of the character. And honestly, that might be the smartest long-term move they can make. By the end of Doomsday, I think we'll have the sense that King's presence still haunts the MCU, even if he's not physically there. His technology, his temporal scars, his manipulation of the TVA, all of it could continue to affect the heroes in subtle ways. And that's how Marvel could make King immortal. Not through endless appearances, but through influence, through legacy. Maybe the next generation of heroes, the young Avengers, the Midnight Suns, whoever rises after Secret Wars, will still be dealing with the consequences of King's actions. Time rifts, paradoxes, fractures that can never be undone. That's King's real victory. Even in defeat, he changes everything. Because when you tamper with time, the consequences never end, they just evolve. And that's the foundation of what I think Marvel's building toward. King's return, not as a man, but as a multiversal constant. He might vanish in Doomsday. He might reappear in Secret Wars. He might even return as a completely new version afterward. But the key idea remains the same. King never truly leaves. He is time. He is inevitability. He is the storm before the multiverse resets. And I think that's exactly what Marvel wants us to feel. That sense of unease. That knowledge that no matter what happens next, King's shadow is always there, waiting, watching, recalculating. Because in a universe built on infinite possibilities, the return of King isn't a question of if. It's a question of when. When you really start peeling back the layers of King's potential return, you realize something unsettling. Marvel has already shown us how he can come back. The breadcrumbs are scattered all over Loki Season 2. Every time I rewatch that finale, I catch another clue. The entire TVA timeline web, the branches, the glowing temporal threads, it's literally the shape of eternity itself. And at the center sits Loki, holding together infinite realities. But what exactly is he holding back? What power is he preventing from escaping into the timelines? I've got a feeling that Loki's sacrifice at the end of Season 2 isn't just about preserving the multiverse, it's about containing it. Containing something dangerous. Something that could rewrite everything. And that something could very well be King. Think about it, he who remains told us the TVA existed to prune branches before they led to another multiversal war. Those wars were fought between Kangs. So now that the branches are free again, the Kangs are multiplying. Loki's sitting there, holding the whole structure in balance, acting as a cosmic firewall against total collapse. But how long can that last? Sooner or later, something has to give. And when it does, the multiverse doesn't just expand, it erupts. That's the moment I think Avengers Doomsday will open with, the eruption of time itself. The collapse of Loki's containment. And when that happens, the first wave of chaos to escape won't be heroes. It'll be Kangs. Not one, not two, but an entire surge of fragmented variants pouring through time, each with conflicting agendas. Some might want revenge. Others might see an opportunity to seize control. But one variant, one particular remnant of the Conqueror could be different. Smarter, more patient. The king who learns from his past selves and waits in the shadows while doom rises. This could explain why Kang's return in Doomsday feels short, because his comeback isn't about domination this time. It's about survival. Here's where I think the storytelling brilliance comes in. Imagine the movie beginning with a kind of temporal earthquake, cities flickering between eras, people seeing echoes of themselves across time, maybe even familiar Avengers caught in overlapping moments. During this chaos, the heroes might trace the source back to a single anomaly, Kang's quantum core reactivating on its own. But here's the twist. The core isn't just a power source. It's a beacon. It's calling something back. And when that beacon flares to life, we see a silhouette emerging from fractured time. Kang appears disoriented, enraged, confused. He's not the same version from Quantumania, but he carries its memory. His voice carries the same authority, but his energy feels unstable, almost fractured. That instability could be the clue. He's not whole. He's a splinter, a variant born from the death of another. And before we can understand who he truly is, Doom intervenes. Dr. Doom steps into the story like a cosmic chess player who's been watching from the sidelines. He doesn't see Kang as an enemy. He sees him as a variable, a piece of the puzzle that no longer fits. And that's when Kang's brief reappearance reaches its end. Doom annihilates him, maybe using Kang's own time travel energy against him, erasing his existence from the current reality. To the heroes, it looks like victory. To the audience, it feels like closure. But to the timeline itself, it's a wound, a fracture that reverberates through all existence. Because when you erase someone who exists across all time, you don't just kill them, you destabilize causality itself. And that, I think, will be the true beginning of Avengers Doomsday. This moment would also serve as the perfect narrative bridge. Doom removes Kang as a threat to claim control of the multiverse, but in doing so, he unintentionally releases Kang's essence across countless realities, echoes, fragments, unfinished loops of consciousness drifting through the time stream. These echoes could start manifesting as glitches in reality. Maybe characters see flashes of Kang's face in mirrors. Maybe devices start transmitting his voice. Maybe old TVA monitors suddenly light up, showing a single message: he's not gone. That's the type of haunting continuity Marvel loves, not a direct sequel, but a lingering presence that keeps the tension alive. And if we track these echoes forward, they start converging again, slowly reforming into something new. A composite king, born not from ambition, but from memory. This version wouldn't be the same conqueror who sought domination. He'd be something more dangerous. A king who remembers every defeat. Let's talk about Doom's part in all this, because understanding his rise helps explain Kang's potential return. In the comics, Doom's most powerful form, God Emperor Doom, gains control over reality after stealing the Beyonder's power. He reshapes everything into Battleworld, a single planet made of fragments from destroyed universes. Now imagine Avengers Doomsday echoing that same structure. Doom Doom seizes power after removing Kang, merging collapsing timelines into one stable reality under his control. He justifies it as saving the multiverse, but in truth, he's shaping it in his own image. But here's the paradox. By absorbing fragments of broken timelines, Doom also absorbs fragments of Kang's energy, his technology, maybe even his essence. Kang becomes part of Doom's creation. And deep within that new world, pieces of Kang's consciousness begin to reassemble. That's how he returns, not through resurrection, but through reclamation. He was erased, but he left his fingerprints everywhere. When you think about it, this aligns perfectly with how Secret Wars could be structured. Doom rules Battleworld, a patchwork universe filled with displaced heroes and villains. The Avengers, separated across different zones, try to regroup. But what if, hidden beneath the surface of this stitched-together reality, something's growing? Kang, a version of him born from the merged timelines, existing as a ghost in the machine of Doom's creation. Maybe he starts as whispers, voices in the cracks of reality. Maybe he communicates through time distortions, trying to reach the surviving Avengers. At first they think it's another trick from Doom, but eventually they realize it's Kang, and he's offering them information about Doom's weaknesses. That dynamic would be fascinating, heroes forced to work with the devil they once defeated. Because in Secret Wars, the line between ally and enemy starts to blur. And Kang, this new reborn Kang, could see himself not as a villain anymore, but as a survivor of evolution. The only one who truly understands how fragile the multiverse is. One of the most powerful ideas in Kang's mythology is self-awareness. Every variant knows what it means to be him. They all understand they're part of a grand looping narrative that's destined to repeat. So imagine this reborn Kang, aware of his past failures, aware of his countless deaths, deciding he doesn't want to conquer anymore. He wants to transcend. That's the key difference between Doom and Kang in this scenario. Doom seeks to control reality. Kang seeks to escape it. This could make their eventual conflict in Secret Wars something much deeper than just another villain fight. It becomes a battle between two philosophies. The man who refuses to let go and the man who's finally learned to. And what's even more poetic, Kang might actually become the reason Doom loses. Think about it. Doom's arrogance always blinds him. He believes he's in control, but Kang, having mastered time itself, might see that Doom's empire is built on instability. He might know exactly when and where the structure will collapse. So maybe when the Avengers finally confront Doom, Kang plays the wild card, appearing one last time to trigger the chain reaction that brings the god's empire crashing down. Not for power, not for revenge, but to ensure the cycle doesn't repeat again. Now, before we dive deeper into that climax, I want to step back and explore a more emotional layer to all this, the concept of legacy. Even if Kang never fully returns as the main antagonist, his influence runs through everything in the Multiverse Saga. The TVA, the time rifts, the very notion of variance. Every consequence the heroes face stems from Kang's original experimentations with time. So even in absence, Kang becomes a mythic figure, the ghost that shaped history. I can totally picture scenes where characters like Doctor Strange or Loki talk about Kang in reverent, fearful tones. He's the reason we're here, Strange might say. Every reality we've touched is scarred because of him. That's powerful storytelling when the villain's presence is felt without them ever needing to appear. And that's how Marvel could use Kang to thread emotional continuity across Doomsday and Secret Wars. He's not just a character, he's a warning. But let's bring it back to how this sets up Secret Wars in detail. Picture the closing minutes of Avengers Doomsday. The multiverse collapses. Reality shatters. We see the Avengers scattered across fragments of existence. Maybe a post-apocalyptic New York floating beside an Asgard remnant. A Wakandan island suspended in the void. And somewhere in that chaos, a flicker of light forms, Kang's energy signature. We don't see him yet, just the faint shimmer of blue temporal radiation pulsing in the darkness. It's subtle, but unmistakable. That's Marvel's way of saying he's not gone, he's waiting. Then the screen cuts to black. The logo appears, Avengers Secret Wars. That's the perfect way to tease his return, not through dialogue, not through exposition, but through implication. Now let's talk about the comic parallels, because they reveal a lot about what Marvel could be planning. In the comics, Kang and Doom have an intense rivalry that's both personal and philosophical. Kang views Doom as a primitive version of himself, a man who refuses to evolve beyond the present. Doom, on the other hand, sees Kang as an arrogant child obsessed with toys he doesn't understand. It's pure genius-level egomania, two intellects convinced the other is beneath them. If Marvel brings that to life on screen, it won't just be about power. It'll be about identity. Both men think they're the ultimate version of humanity, the one who mastered time, destiny, and existence itself. But neither realizes that their obsessions make them mirror images of one another. I think Doomsday and Secret Wars will use that duality to explore something deeper. What happens when control becomes addiction? Because ultimately both men fear the same thing, insignificance. Kang fears being forgotten by time. Doom fears being ruled by it. And that's what makes them perfect foils. By the time we reach the midpoint of Secret Wars, I believe Marvel will flip the audience's perception. Doom starts as the godlike ruler, but we slowly realize he's losing control. The multiverse is rebelling against him. And the one orchestrating that rebellion? The ghost of Kang. This is where that concept of the multiversal wild card really pays off. Kang's not the hero. He's not the villain. He's the variable that makes everything unpredictable. He might manipulate the Avengers to strike Doom at the exact moment the timeline destabilizes. He might create time loops to buy them an advantage. Maybe he even sacrifices himself, not to save anyone, but to ensure that Doom's empire collapses before it becomes eternal. And when it's all over, when Battleworld disintegrates and reality begins to reboot, there's a brief silence. The dust settles. And in that silence we hear it, a heartbeat, a pulse, the sound of time resetting. That's Kang, not dead, not alive, just waiting. It's such an elegant storytelling trick, Kang's entire arc built on the illusion of endings. Every time he's defeated, it's just another iteration of the same loop. Doom thinks he killed him. The heroes think they stopped him. But in truth, they only completed the cycle that keeps Kang immortal. And here's the wild part. Secret Wars could use that loop to reboot the entire MCU timeline. Imagine that after Doom's defeat, time fractures one last time, and the multiverse compresses into a single, unified reality. The heroes wake up in a new universe, familiar, but slightly different. Some faces changed, some memories altered. That's how Marvel could quietly recast or reintroduce characters, including Kang. It's not just a storytelling choice. It's an in-universe justification. And that leads perfectly into the next era, Phase 7, with Kang reborn, perhaps younger, more refined, maybe even portrayed by a different actor, emerging as the new master of time in a freshly rebooted universe. By this point, we've seen Kang the Conqueror, He Who Remains, Immortus, Ramatut. But the one we haven't seen yet is Destiny Kang. The version who finally understands that true power isn't about domination, it's about inevitability. I think that's who we'll meet next. A Kang who's no longer fighting the flow of time, but guiding it. Maybe even shaping it for the greater good, or at least his own version of it. He might even serve as a cosmic guardian in the background of the next saga, influencing events, steering timelines, ensuring the mistakes of Doom and the Avengers never repeat. Because for a character built on loops, the only real ending is evolution. And that's what makes King so endlessly fascinating. He's not just a villain you defeat. He's a constant you adapt to. He's the mirror the universe holds up to itself, asking, what happens when you try to control destiny? As movie casts Liam Harrison, I've spent months tracing these threads, reading between the frames, watching how Marvel sets up long-term payoffs. And if there's one thing they never waste, it's symbolism. King's story isn't over, because it was never meant to be a single story. It's a cycle, like time itself. Each defeat births a new version. Each collapse sets the stage for rebirth. And as Doomsday and Secret Wars approach, I think we're about to witness that cycle play out on the grandest scale imaginable, where two gods fight for control of existence. And in the end, neither wins. Only time does. And time, as we know, always belongs to Kang. The more I think about it, the more I realize that King's story was never just about power, it's about revenge. Not revenge in the traditional sense, but something much deeper. Revenge against destiny itself. In Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, we saw hints of that desperation. A man trapped outside of time, stripped of his empire, forced to claw his way back to relevance. That wasn't just the story of a villain. It was the story of someone who believed he'd been wronged by fate. And that's what makes the next stage of King's potential return so fascinating. If Doom is the man who conquers the multiverse, then Kang is the man who conquers inevitability. So picture this. In Avengers Doomsday, Doom rises. He takes control, reshapes the multiverse into his own design, believing he's the one who finally outsmarted time itself. But beneath his throne of fractured realities, something begins to stir, a whisper from the void. Kang's essence, splintered and scattered, starts to reform. It doesn't happen instantly. It's slow, deliberate, almost methodical, as if time itself is putting him back together. The echoes of his past selves, the Conqueror, the Scientist, the Emperor, converge into one being. And when he finally awakens, he remembers everything. Every failure, every death, every humiliation. And this time, he's not just back to conquer. He's back to rewrite the concept of control itself. That's where the revenge arc begins. I imagine Kang watching Doom's empire from the shadows, the chaos, the corruption, the arrogance. Doom's multiverse might look perfect on the surface, but it's built on borrowed time. Kang knows it. He can see the cracks in the structure, moments of instability where universes flicker in and out of existence, where Doom's godhood is more illusion than truth. And that's when Kang decides he won't fight Doom's empire directly. He'll let it collapse under its own weight. Because that's Kang's real strength, patience. Doom might have the arrogance of a king, but Kang has the perspective of eternity. He starts small, subtle. Maybe he manipulates a few surviving heroes, characters like Loki, Strange, or even Reed Richards. He feeds them information, cryptic clues about Doom's weakness. He appears in reflections, in time echoes, offering riddles that sound like warnings, but are really seeds of rebellion. And as the cracks widen, Kang strikes. This is where we could see the true Kang versus Doom conflict, not a physical war, but a war of ideology. Doom believes in the supremacy of will. He thinks he can control creation itself through intellect and dominance. Kang believes in the supremacy of time, that no matter what, all control is temporary, all power is fleeting, and every god eventually falls to entropy. That's why their rivalry matters so much. They're both right and both wrong. In one sense, Doom represents the ultimate human ego, the belief that knowledge and control can transcend chaos. Kang represents the ultimate cosmic truth, that chaos is the natural order, and trying to stop it only accelerates it. It's this philosophical duel that could define Secret Wars. Maybe Doom's empire begins to crumble, not because the heroes defeat him, but because Kang ensures the timeline itself rebels. Temporal distortions, paradoxes, loops, all of them eating away at Doom's manufactured perfection until it implodes. And when that moment finally comes, Kang steps out of the shadows, revealing himself as the architect of Doom's downfall. Imagine the look on Doom's face, the one man he thought he erased standing before him again, calm, composed, inevitable. That's when Kang delivers his ultimate line, something chilling, poetic, simple. Maybe you thought you ruled time, but I am time. That's the moment that defines the arc. This version of Kang, the one reborn through chaos, wouldn't be the same Conqueror from Quantumania. He wouldn't rant, or rage, or threaten. He'd be serene, patient, almost godlike. The kind of calm that only comes from someone who's seen every possible outcome and accepted them all. And that's what makes him terrifying. Because this king doesn't need to rule the multiverse. He just needs to outlast it. In a way, his revenge against Doom isn't even personal, it's philosophical. Doom tries to bind reality to his will, while Kang simply allows it to fall back into its natural state, endless possibility. Doom destroys what he can't control. Kang embraces what he can't predict. That's how Kang wins. Not through domination, through endurance, through inevitability. Let's take a step back and look at what this means for the heroes caught in the middle. Imagine the Avengers during this war, disoriented, fractured, each trapped in different sections of Doom's multiverse. Maybe Captain Marvel leads resistance forces in one universe. Maybe Loki and Strange are trying to restabilize collapsing realities. Maybe Spider-Man is just trying to survive in a world that keeps rewriting itself every minute. And amidst this chaos, they keep encountering traces of Kang. A holographic message here, a flicker in the time stream there. Sometimes he seems like an ally. Other times, a manipulator. But as the story unfolds, they realize something. Kang's not fighting for them. He's fighting through them. They're pawns in a larger game. A cosmic rebalancing act between gods. That's when the emotional weight of Kang's revenge truly hits. He's not just punishing Doom. He's punishing the system itself. The endless cycle of creation and destruction that both heroes and villains are trapped inside. To him, none of them deserve control. They're all products of the same flawed timeline. And that's when it dawns on them, Kang doesn't just want revenge. He wants liberation. Here's a theory that's been keeping me up at night. What if Kang's ultimate goal isn't to conquer the multiverse, but to end it? Not in a nihilistic way, but in a restorative one. To break the loop, to allow reality to finally rest. That's why he needed to return. That's why he had to survive Doom's erasure. Every Kang before him sought to dominate time. But this Kang finally understands the curse of infinity. If everything repeats, then no victory ever lasts. No empire ever stands. The only way to truly win is to stop the loop entirely. That could be Marvel's boldest twist yet. The villain who doesn't want power, but peace. The conqueror who finally decides that the only way to fix time is to destroy it. And maybe that's what Secret Wars becomes. Not just the end of the multiverse, but the death of repetition itself. If we frame it like that, Kang's revenge takes on almost mythic proportions. He's not fighting Doom for dominance. He's fighting him for meaning. In a sense, he's fighting us, the audience, because we keep expecting the loop to continue. We expect endless reboots, endless cycles, endless next big villains. Kang's return, an ultimate choice to end the loop, becomes a meta-commentary on storytelling itself. That's what makes the theory so poetic. Kang, the embodiment of narrative repetition, of every movie, every saga, every timeline, finally breaking free from the loop to become something beyond story. That's the kind of layered, symbolic storytelling Marvel loves to build toward without saying it outright. Now, I want to explore something deeper. What this would mean for Doom. Doom's ego is his downfall. He believes he's untouchable, that no one could ever manipulate him. So, when he discovers that Kang has been orchestrating the collapse of his empire from within, it destroys him. In the comics, Doom's defeats are always tied to his inability to accept imperfection. He refuses to believe he can fail. And that's what Kang exposes, Doom's illusion of control. When Kang confronts him, he doesn't fight him physically. He lets Doom see every version of himself that failed. Every Doom who thought he won. Every Doom who lost everything. It's psychological warfare on a cosmic scale. Kang doesn't need to lift a finger. He just lets Doom experience what it means to live outside time, to witness the futility of control. And for the first time, Doom breaks. That's the emotional climax, the moment when Doom realizes he's not a god, not a conqueror, just another echo in the infinite loop. And when that realization hits, the multiverse begins to unravel. But where does that leave Kang? If his plan is to end the cycle, does he survive? Does he ascend? Does he vanish with the collapsing multiverse? Here's what I think. Kang doesn't die. He transcends. Maybe as the multiverse collapses, Kang steps into the heart of it, into the singularity where all timelines converge. He becomes part of the very fabric of time. He doesn't rule it. He is it. That would explain everything. Why he can never truly die, why variants keep appearing, why time itself bends around his presence. Kang isn't just a man anymore. He's the consciousness of time, the echo of every moment that's ever existed. That's how Marvel could both end and preserve him. They could close this saga while leaving the door open for his essence to reappear, a cosmic whisper that shapes future timelines. And here's where things get even more intriguing. What if Kang's transcendence at the end of Secret Wars becomes the reason for the next phase of the MCU? If time itself becomes self-aware, if Kang becomes the sentient embodiment of causality, then the next saga could explore what happens when the universe gains consciousness. It's a mind-bending concept, but one that fits the MCU's current trajectory. We've already seen the birth of celestials, the rise of cosmic entities, the TVA as a bureaucratic god machine. The next logical step is time itself waking up. That's Kang's ultimate legacy, not as a villain, but as a force of nature. Now, let's tie that back to the idea of a Kang recast or reboot. If Secret Wars ends with reality collapsing and reforming, then the new MCU timeline could naturally produce a different version of Kang, one that doesn't remember everything, but carries fragments of the original's wisdom. That's how Marvel keeps the character alive while giving the franchise a fresh start. The rebooted Kang wouldn't be the Conqueror anymore. He might appear first as Nathaniel Richards, the scientist who will eventually become Kang. And that creates a whole new playground for storytelling. Maybe this new Nathaniel works with the Fantastic Four, unaware of the destiny that awaits him. Maybe small choices he makes start echoing with déjà vu, the faint memories of universes that no longer exist. That's poetic symmetry. Kang's story begins again, but subtly, quietly, with a new face and new context. It's the perfect way to continue the myth without retelling it. To me, that's what makes this theory so powerful. It doesn't just explain how Kang could return. It explains why he must. Because his story isn't about death and rebirth. It's about transformation. Every appearance, from Loki to Quantumania, from Doomsday to Secret Wars, is another stage in his evolution from man to myth. By the time we reach the end of this saga, Kang's existence won't even depend on physical form anymore. He'll become an idea, the concept of inevitability itself. And that's something no reboot, no recast, no narrative shift can erase. Because as long as the MCU deals with time, Kang will always be there, watching, waiting, whispering. And when you think about it like that, Kang's revenge isn't about vengeance at all. It's about balance. He punishes Doom for trying to force order onto chaos. He punishes the Avengers for believing they could escape consequence. He punishes reality itself for pretending it's stable. But in the end, it's not cruelty. It's correction. The restoration of equilibrium. That's what separates him from every villain who came before. Thanos wanted control through destruction. Doom wants control through intellect. Kang achieves control by letting go. He becomes the storm that passes through time, inevitable, unending, indifferent. And when he's gone, all that remains is silence, until the next ripple begins. That's the beauty of Kang's story. It's not linear. It's cyclical. Every ending is just another beginning, not because of cheap repetition, but because that's the nature of time itself. Marvel could use that cycle to evolve the entire universe, allowing heroes, villains, and even the laws of reality to transform. Kang's legacy becomes the foundation of what comes next. Phase 7 might not even call him Kang anymore. Maybe he returns under a new name, a new identity born from the ashes of time. But at his core, he'll still be the same presence, the same inevitability that has haunted every version of the MCU since the beginning. Because when you strip it all away, the costumes, the timelines, the multiverse, Kang's story is the story of us, our obsession with control, our fear of change, our refusal to accept the one truth the universe keeps whispering: everything ends. But endings are just beginnings we haven't recognized yet. There's a strange calm after the collapse. Imagine that moment right after Secret Wars ends. Silence, suspended dust, the last fragments of universes fading into the void. The heroes are gone. Doom's empire is ash. The timelines have folded in on themselves like paper burning at both ends. And in the middle of that silence, something moves. It's not a scream or an explosion. It's a pulse, a single beat, echoing through nothingness. That's Kang, or rather what's left of him. His form flickers between infinite versions, young, old, mechanical, spectral, every Kang that ever was, compressed into a single being. He doesn't speak because he doesn't need to. His presence is the narrative now. And in that final moment, I imagine him smiling. Because for the first time in eternity, the noise is gone. The war, the chaos, the noise of endless time. It's finally quiet. This is where Kang's story reaches its metaphysical peak. See, in every timeline, Kang tried to control time. He built empires, fought gods, killed variants. But every attempt failed because he was fighting the flow. The final Kang, the one who survives the collapse, doesn't resist the flow anymore. He becomes it. That's the paradox that defines his end. The conqueror who wins by surrendering. As the void breathes in new light, something extraordinary happens. The multiverse begins to bloom again, not in the same way, not as a million fragmented realities, but as one coherent thread. A rebirth. This is where Marvel could lay the groundwork for its next era, the Singularity timeline. A universe rebuilt from the ashes of Secret Wars, shaped not by gods or machines, but by memory itself. And Kang, now one with time, becomes the architect of this rebirth. He doesn't control it like Doom tried to. Instead, he guides it gently, subtly, like a current steering the river's flow. We could see glimpses of him across the cosmos, his face in constellations, his voice whispering in forgotten ruins, his essence encoded into the laws of physics. Every choice made by every being becomes part of his design, not as domination, but as harmony. It's poetic justice. The villain who once wanted to rule time becomes the guardian who ensures it can never be ruled again. But Marvel being Marvel, they'll never leave a story that simple. Because if Kang has transcended into the flow of time, that means his consciousness touches everything. Every atom, every soul, every reality that reforms after the collapse. And that introduces something fascinating. The concept of temporal echoes. These are people, moments, or even universes that remember Kang even if they shouldn't. They dream of him. They see visions of a man who stands outside of time. They experience deja vu for events that never happened. Imagine a scene in a future MCU movie. Maybe it's Fantastic Four, maybe Avengers New Dawn. A character says something like, "I swear I've seen this before." They describe a blue-faced man, a shadow that moved between realities, whispering the same phrase, "We are what remains." That's not just nostalgia or fan service. That's the ripple effect of Kang's transcendence. Even erased, he's not gone. He's imprinted onto existence itself. And that brings us to one of the boldest possibilities, that Kang's defeat in Secret Wars actually creates the new universe. Think about it. He who remains said in Loki that without him, chaos would reign. But what if his final act, the convergence of all Kang variants into a single being, was the universe's way of evolving? Maybe time isn't linear anymore. Maybe Kang's essence becomes the quantum consciousness of the multiverse, not a ruler, but the neural network that keeps reality in balance. The TVA, as we knew it, could dissolve, but its purpose, maintaining equilibrium, becomes natural law. Every universe now self-corrects because Kang's mind is embedded within its DNA. He's the new constant. And here's the wild part. The heroes won't even know it. They'll believe they rebuilt reality on their own. But in truth, every choice they make is subtly influenced by the ghost of the Conqueror, making sure the loop doesn't restart. That's where the reboot comes in. With Secret Wars resetting the timeline, Marvel gets a clean slate. New actors, new stories, new tone, but underneath it all, the hidden truth remains. Kang never left. Maybe the audience will never be told directly. Maybe it's something only hinted at. A symbol, a line, a look. For instance, imagine Nathaniel Richards in the new MCU timeline, brilliant, curious, slightly haunted. He's not Kang yet, not even close. But every now and then, he zones out. Lost in a vision of destruction he doesn't understand. He sketches blue circuitry in his notebook. He dreams of a quantum throne. Those aren't dreams. Those are memories. That's Kang's imprint echoing through the new timeline, the lingering spark of the Conqueror's soul. And it's the perfect setup for Phase 7 and beyond. Marvel can move forward with a new actor, a new characterization, and still stay faithful to the legacy. Kang doesn't need to return physically because he's become myth, the cosmic subconscious of the MCU itself. Now let's look at how Dr. Doom fits into this new order. If Kang becomes the eternal, intangible flow, Doom becomes the eternal reminder of resistance. His defeat in Secret Wars isn't the end of his story, it's the beginning of his obsession. Maybe fragments of Doom survive in this new universe. Not his power, not his empire, but his memory. He wakes up in Latveria, stripped of his godhood, haunted by visions of the Conqueror. He can't explain why he remembers dying, why he dreams of the multiverse collapsing, or why the name Kang fills him with rage. And that's the spark that reignites Doom's arc. The man who once fought time itself, now trapped inside its reborn cage, vowing to understand and break it again. That's the beauty of cyclical storytelling. Kang's transcendence doesn't erase conflict. It evolves it. Every saga after this becomes another round in the eternal duel between control and surrender, Doom's pride versus Kang's acceptance. And every hero caught in between becomes a reflection of that balance. But let's not forget the human side of all this, the emotional closure. For the Avengers, the end of Secret Wars won't feel like victory. It'll feel like loss. They'll stand in a world that's familiar but slightly off, like a song they know by heart, played in a different key. Some will sense the change more than others. Strange might feel the echoes of forgotten universes. Loki might see faces he remembers dying. Wanda might feel the phantom heartbeat of worlds she once created. And in quiet moments, they'll all feel something watching. Not a threat, not an enemy, just a presence. That's Kang, the whisper in the wind, the tick behind the silence. It's poetic. The Avengers spend years fighting the Conqueror of Time, only to realize that he's now the time that flows through them. And maybe, in some strange way, that's what Kang wanted all along, to be understood. To no longer fight against the universe, but with it. Here's a thought that might just blow your mind. What if the Kang we've been following this whole time, from Loki to Quantumania to Secret Wars, wasn't the villain at all? What if he was the corrective mechanism? The multiverse's immune response to imbalance. Every time someone tampered with time, from Tony's time heist to Strange's spell, reality fractured further, and Kang appeared not as a conqueror, but as a counterweight. Maybe he who remains wasn't warning us about Kang. Maybe he was Kang's final stage, the version who understood the balance required to sustain existence. So when the multiverse collapses in Secret Wars and Kang ascends into the flow, it's not destruction, it's restoration. The cycle ends not with domination, but with understanding. That brings us to the grand philosophical core. The part that makes this more than just a comic book theory. Kang represents humanity's relationship with time itself. We fight it, we fear it, we try to control it, but in the end, we all surrender to it. Every hero, every villain, every story. Kang's evolution from tyrant to transcendence mirrors our own journey toward acceptance. The MCU, through him, becomes an allegory for growth, not just of characters, but of storytelling itself. Phase by phase, universe by universe, we've watched Marvel move from grounded realism to cosmic myth. And now through Kang, it can move beyond mythology into philosophy. The idea that time isn't an enemy, but the medium through which all things become real. That's the true genius of Kang's potential return. It's not about multiverse battles or CGI spectacle. It's about confronting the fundamental question every story faces. What happens when you run out of time? And the answer is, you evolve. That's why I believe Avengers Secret Wars won't end with a victory. It'll end with an awakening. The heroes will survive, but changed. The villains will fall, but echo. And the universe itself will hum with the presence of something greater, something eternal. In that final moment, when everything resets, maybe we'll hear one last line. Maybe it's just a whisper. Maybe it's a voice that sounds like it's coming from everywhere and nowhere. I told you I would return. Cut to black. That's how you immortalize Kang. And when the new era begins, when we see the fresh roster of Avengers, the new Fantastic Four, the mutants, and whatever else Marvel dreams up next, they won't be standing on new ground. They'll be walking on the ashes of old timelines, carried forward by the ghost of a man who once tried to own time and became it instead. That's the legacy that will keep echoing through every story, whether we see him or not. Every clock on every wall. Every mention of time running out. Every piece of tech that manipulates reality. Kang's fingerprints will still be there. Because you can erase a villain. You can recast a face. But you can't erase an idea. And Kang was never just a man. He was the idea of inevitability made flesh. So if you ever sit in a future Marvel theater years from now watching a new generation of heroes and you notice something familiar, a faint blue shimmer in the background, a line that feels like deja vu, remember this. Kang didn't die. He evolved. He became the breath between seconds, the pause between endings and beginnings, the whisper that reminds us that time always finds a way forward. He is the reason stories continue. And that's the most fitting ending Marvel could give him. Not destruction, but transcendence. So that's my full breakdown of how Kang the Conqueror could return. Not as another multiversal villain, but as the silent architect of the MCU's rebirth. Maybe he appears briefly in Doomsday. Maybe he challenges Doom in Secret Wars. But ultimately, Kang's legacy will outlive every hero, every villain, every version of reality. Because he's no longer bound by them. He is them. And if Marvel pulls this off, if they truly let Kang's story evolve from conquest to enlightenment, it won't just redefine the MCU. It'll redefine what cinematic storytelling can be. That's why I believe Kang's return isn't just inevitable. It's necessary. Because time always finds its conqueror. And hey, if you've made it all the way through this theory, you're officially part of the timeline that remembers. I'm Liam Harrison, and this has been MovieCast. If you enjoyed this deep dive into Kang's possible return in Avengers Doomsday and Secret Wars, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. It helps the channel reach more movie fans like you. And if you'd like to support the channel directly, you can hit the Super Thanks button. Every $20 contribution goes right back into creating these massive breakdowns, theories, and edits for all of you. Until next time, stay curious. Stay curious. Stay cinematic. And remember, in every ending, there's always a beginning waiting to be rewritten.